My name is Jonathon Keats, and I am an experimental philosopher, artist, and writer. With my work, I try to ask big questions and to invite others into the space that opens up through the questions that I ask, effectively to undertake philosophy in public, because, in my opinion, philosophy is far too important for philosophers, for professional philosophers in an academic setting. We all need to be asking big questions together, questions about time and space, but questions that are situated in terms of our own decisions and the ways in which we interact here in the present, as well as the ways in which we collectively construct the future. My work here in Burghausen is of a piece with many other clocks and calendars that I've created, all with the intent of having a broader conversation, a dialogue about time and what time means. And these projects relate to other projects that I've undertaken elsewhere around the world that are looking at questions ranging from the ways in which we make decisions as a society, or considering what would happen if other species were to participate in democratic decision-making processes, to questions about what sort of communication might be possible across the cosmos, what sort of music we might make if we were to have an orchestra that also invited extraterrestrials to participate, and how that might help us to better understand ourselves and to recognize our commonalities. In every project, I start with a big question, but then I try to make it tangible. I try to make it something that we can all experience viscerally in order to be able to grapple with the ideas and ideally to come to some sort of conclusions or consensus that is collective and that is certainly much more profound than anything I could ever have imagined. And yet, really for me, it's about opening up larger questions. And so I'm always looking to create a thought experiment, a philosophical thought experiment that is not so much in search of an answer as in search of ways in which to search more deeply. What if the flow of time were calibrated by the flow of a river? That's the question I've been asking myself here in Burghausen, looking at the Salzach River and observing how its flow is changing from moment to moment, but also how it changes over years and centuries and millennia. I've been developing a clock and a calendar where the calibration is unusual, at least by standards that we're accustomed to. Instead of every minute being of the same duration as every other, instead of the years being always of the same length, I've been calibrating a clock and a calendar where the rate at which time passes changes based on the rate at which water is flowing down the Salzach. That might sound absurd, and perhaps it is, but I think it's an essential reorientation that we need today in order to be able to situate ourselves in the environment through timekeeping, a vernacular that we all know. We need to be able to recognize the impact of our actions, and an atomic clock or a pendulum clock for that matter, they don't change in any way based on what we do. So when we coordinate our actions on the basis of such a clock, we are able to leverage great power in this form of logistics, but we are not in any way sensitized to what happens when we do things that have an impact on the local and the planetary ecology. By creating a clock and calendar that are sensitive to environmental conditions. I aspire to create a sort of a feedback loop, a mechanism for attaining homeostasis, a mechanism where the clock changes in terms of its rate on the basis of the conditions that we affect and where that might affect us in turn, so that we might be able to be in relation to the environment, to this living system that is the Salzach River and all the others who live on it, human as well as other animals and plants, such that they might be able to live alongside us, that we might be able to live together in some sort of harmony. According to this clock, it's nearly midnight on Monday, May 11th, 2026. If I were to check my watch, I would find that the time was nearly 12 hours different. It's 5 minutes past noon right now, and we are the end of July. The clock, however, it's not broken. It is calibrated on the basis of a system that is not the same as the system that is used to calibrate all of the clocks and calendars we're familiar with, including those that chime from various towers and churches here in Burghausen. The clock is calibrated by the flow of the Salzach River, where what we've done is to take the Salzach on average over the past 125 years, the average flow rate for the river. And every 15 minutes, we get the current flow rate, and we compare these, and the ratio determines the rate at which the clock is running. The clock was initiated in terms of its timekeeping for the Salzach on January 1st, 2026. And it's been running slowly relative to standard time, as can be seen watching the seconds now, but also as can be seen in the calendar that is lagging behind the Gregorian calendar. All of this is indicative of the complex conditions of the environment here, as well as throughout Germany, up into the Alps, and ultimately worldwide. The effects of climate change can be seen in the clock, not directly, but indirectly, in terms of all the different systems that interact, that result in the discharge from the glaciers as well as other sources, how that affects the amount of water flowing through the Salzach here in Burghausen, and therefore the amount of water available in the water table as a whole. I think this is important in terms of our being able to consider water as a resource, but it's more important to me in terms of being able to think about the river as an active part of our environment, as in fact an aspect of the environment that can activate us, because so much of what we do affects the river and affects the rate at which it flows. The river becomes an observatory by which to observe our actions and to calibrate them accordingly, to determine how best to be in sync with the environment in terms of what we are doing, in terms of the resources we're using, in terms of the choices that we're making at the level of irrigation, at the level of carbon emissions, all of it. All of it is in this clock. Even though this is not a doomsday clock, and it isn't in any way counting down to the apocalypse or assuming that all is going to be catastrophic in the future, it is nevertheless a clock that carries meaning. It carries meaning that we make together, and we make that meaning through our actions in the world. Here we are on the Saltsack River, or on a representation of it made using alpine stone. The river represented here includes the meanders, the bends in the river that have changed through history and will continue to change in time. And what I have done is to set milestones in the ground near where the river flows. So the year 2600 here, 2700, 2800, all the way out to the year 3000. And what these milestones are anticipating is a way in which the meander will change, the way in which it will widen as a result of natural processes. And the idea is to treat the river as a natural calendar based on past flow rate for the river, based on past discharge. The idea is ultimately on the river itself, on the river outside, to set milestones in the ground that anticipate where the river will flow in 100 years, 1,000 years, and potentially more, and to then look to the river in terms of where it actually flows, and to use that as a way in which to be able to find out what time it is in fluvial years. Those fluvial years, because the river is likely to flow more slowly in the future, though it could also flow more rapidly, those fluvial years might be out of sync with the Gregorian calendar as a result of that difference in flow rate. But from the river's perspective, it's true. It's a reality that the river is living, and I want to encourage us to see that reality and to live in that reality along with the river and along with the watershed. This is a map of the river, a representation, but it's also an invitation to everybody here in Burghausen, everybody who visits this exhibition, to realize this in the world, to actually build a system in Germany and in Austria with real milestones that are actually calculated to show the time that will manifest if all things in the future are as they've been in the past. But as the future turns out to be unlike how the past has been in terms of the flow of the river, where it will be possible walking along the river to find out what time it is from the river's perspective, and to thereby consider ways in which we might be better synchronized with the river, that we might live along with the river in a collective state of being that is essential to planetary homeostasis. These are bond-bearing trees. For a price of 20 euros, you can purchase a bond that is issued by the sweet gum tree and that will allow you to collect interest in the form of seed pods over many hundreds of years in the future, and ultimately to collect the principal in 5 kilograms of timber. The tree itself will issue the bond, and the tree will hold the funds that are raised, which can be used for anything from irrigation to legal defense to potentially political lobbying for laws that are more environmentally oriented. The thing about these bonds that is unusual, beyond the fact that the trees are issuing them with the city of Burghausen as a broker, is the fact that they are on arboreal time. The interest is paid, in other words, not on the calendar that we ordinarily use, the Gregorian calendar, but on an arboreal calendar that is calibrated by the growth of the tree. So in other words, the change in growth rate of the tree as a result of everything from local precipitation to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere on a global scale, all of this will affect the rate at which arboreal years pass, and as a result, the time when a coupon can be clipped and redeemed for a seed pod. The bond is issued by the tree for the entire lifespan of the tree, and upon the tree's natural death, the holder of a bond will be able to come to the city of Burghausen to redeem the bond for that principal, for 5 kilograms of timber, to do with whatever the purchaser would like. But in the interim, the tree will be wealthy and able to participate in our economy. This to me is really important, that we consider time and we consider money, these two fundamental elements of society as we've constructed it, in terms that are more than human, in terms that encompass all life on Earth, all living systems, and the planet itself. I think that when we do this, we have the potential to get outside of our own greed, of our own myopia, of our own anthropocentric view of the world, by creating conditions for an economy that is more than human, that truly encompasses all life on Earth. This becomes a way in which to consider whether the economy makes sense at all in the first place. There is a real proposition here, a way in which the trees can really make the world better from their perspective. But this is also a thought experiment. It's also a way in which to ask whether the systems that we take for granted are the systems that work best for us, for all of us, for all life on Earth.